Okay, so today's session is the final of three. In case you've missed the other sessions, the recordings are available inside this conversation. Just scroll up to get them. In addition to the recordings, the decks that you're seeing during the recordings are also posted in the conversation. So today we're going to talk about Cisco, but we're going to talk about it sort of two flavors. There's what I'm calling the Cisco Cloud legacy applications, as well as Cisco's now Broadsoft applications that they just acquired. So those are the two sessions today. So this part of it, we're just sort of going to talk about the legacy stuff. So you all know about Cisco, 73,000 employees based out of San Jose. They're gigantic, 48 billion in revenue in fiscal 17. Collaboration, so that includes things like UC, contact center, but it also includes all of the video portfolio. So telepresence and all of that is all part of that 4.27 billion number. Their main business obviously is still switching and networking. Collaboration is really only 12% of product revenues. And so, like I said, the UC component within that is even a fraction of that. And none of these numbers obviously include Broadsoft because that deal only closed earlier in February. So Cisco's cloud offerings. There's a lot of them. So Cisco keeps changing gears on cloud. We'll do this, we made a mistake, we'll do that, we made a mistake, let's do that. And so now we're kind of like on the fourth iteration of mistakes. So they began early on with a product that was called HUX, Hosted Unified Communications Solution. That was a multi-tenant cloud offer based on Communications Manager, which is their main, if you will, UC/PBX application. That changed. They changed the name to HCS to drop the U, and it became a single instance version of Communications Manager. So what happens is if I am a carrier, say Verizon, AT&T, you name it, I then install instances of Communications Manager for each customer that wants to use the product inside, say, the Verizon or AT&T data center. Now, granted, the software is virtualized, and because servers are virtualized, it's not like they're rolling in a refrigerator, but it is one customer per tenant. So that's what's currently out there now. There's probably about, 60 or 70 odd carriers around the world that resell HCS as part of their portfolio. Then from there, because HCS really tends towards the larger customer, because again, you're standing up an instance of Communications Manager. You're not just getting 3 guys to run off of a multi-tenant application. And so it's not really cost effective at the low end of the market. And so to get to the low end of the market and sort of to play catch up to Unify, Spark was introduced. So Spark, when it first came out, looked very much like Circuit. It had the file sharing, the persistent chat features, and all the stuff that kind of like what we're using now. And then they rolled out what became known as Spark Call, which was the addition of some PBX calling type features onto Spark. And that kind of annoyed the carriers, and we'll talk about that in a second, but that's sort of where we are, pre-February. You had Spark and Spark Call. Most recently, obviously, Cisco acquired Broadsoft, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And so what does Broadsoft bring to the table, and how does Broadsoft disrupt the rest of Cisco's cloud portfolio? Granted, we don't know, but we've got some clues. So like I said, HCS is that virtualized instance of Communications Manager in a service provider's cloud. It's all custom. So just like somebody could host OpenScape Voice in a private data center and do whatever they wanted to it, attach any applications they wanted to it, so does HCS. And so it's all custom. It supports anything it can do on the premise side. And so cost-wise, finding out what it would cost a customer, that's all going to be custom quotes. So you'll notice like way in the lower right corner where I say HCS and I'm talking about pricing, none, because it's pretty much custom. And so you're never going to figure that one out. It's all going to be deal by deal by deal. So, but beyond that, like I said, it doesn't scale well in the small end. There is some global coverage, but it's unclear whether I can be an HCS customer, say running on Verizon, and then have a secondary POP, say, in the UK running off of BT, and have those two instances be connected. Now, if you're on premise, you could do it, but I don't know if in the cloud they can do a cloud-to-cloud connection. But again, that's probably only going to be for somewhat larger customers. So like I said, Spark was their answer to Circuit, and Spark Call was the add-on of some of those VoIP features. It's a severely limited feature set. I mean, there are more cards in a playing card deck than there are features on Spark Call. But Spark Call really sort of did other things as well, and not good things. It ticked off Cisco's carrier customers who utilize HCS and who resell other parts of the Cisco portfolio, because Spark Call, basically Cisco partnered with IntelliPeer and Tata, and there's a third one out of Canada, to provide the network services for the service. And so why would Verizon, in essence, be reselling PSTN services of somebody else? They weren't. And so that's why Spark Call has been what I would call a pretty big failure. You're not seeing an uptick in the Cisco channel network. You're not seeing customers buying it because of that problem. And so Spark Call is going to be a problem not only on the feature set side for customers, but also from a channel perspective, that there's just not that many feet out on the street. Cisco tries to present Spark with just the circuit type applications as an overlay to HCS for those carrier customers that host HCS. But Spark Call has been dead on arrival. I mean, they were literally on the bandwagon talking to customers and prospects about Spark Call running on Telstra, which is the Australian carrier. And Telstra was up on the stage, playing nice and talking away about it. The deal never got signed. And now it's probably 2 years after they started talking about it. And so the carrier is just not in their camp on this. So I think that was part of the reason why Broadsoft got picked up. And I think Broadsoft was, like I say, to sort of fix that problem. Spark, regardless of whether it's doing the circuit type stuff of the persistent chat and the video and WebRTC stuff, or it's Spark Call, neither one of those products, from what we hear, has gotten a lot of users in the market. I mean, again, I'll say on the next page, because it bears repeating every time I turn the page, Circuit has 500,000 paid subscribers. I would bet you anything that's more than what Spark has today. So that's their portfolio and sort of the goods and bads of it. As you look below, you can see the pricing chart. So we're talking about basically 3 different things, but really 2 different things: Spark and Spark Call, because HCS is there, but it's just there to tell you that it's all custom, so whatever. There's not a lot of pricing we can get out of that. But if you look at Spark, Spark has the free version, obviously free. Then there's M1, M2, and M3. And if you want to add calling, you add calling as a cost on top of whatever M package you have. So like C1 is a combination of the M1 price plus about $20 for the calling features. And so that's how the pricing sort of works out. There's also the way that they sell it is a little bit odd. So M1, you could go on ciscospark.com and actually buy it. You could just, whatever, type in your details, your payment information, whatever, and you could buy that. I think the reason you can do that is because nobody else is selling it. And so Cisco is probably doing that in order to be able to get customers who are willing to pay a couple of bucks for Spark, and then maybe as they grow or their needs change, passing them on to a channel partner. Because M2 through C3, those licenses are sold wholesale to partners. So, partner A goes, yeah, Cisco, give me 10,000 of them Spark licenses. And then it's up to the partner then to resell those licenses, onesie, twosie, 10s and 20s to whatever their customer wants. And so in buying in bulk, the reseller obviously gets a good price on those. And so they buy more of them, and then they can assign them however they want to. But in assigning them however they want to, they're also pricing them however they want to. So whereas we look at list prices for those things and say it's sold wholesale, there really is no list. The list is only what a partner sells on the open market, which is in essence street price. And so looking at a couple of the resellers that do sell Spark on their own, these are the prices that I came up with as far as quote unquote street prices. But who knows? I mean, they could be buying, that M2 license that they're trying to sell for 15 bucks. they could be buying that for $3. You have no idea what the uplift is in that and how much cushion there might be. Because $15 is kind of sort of what they advertise. But again, one of their customers could go to them and say, yeah, I got 1,000 users. What can you do with that $15? And that may turn into 13 or 12, or you don't know. And so the pricing that I have here is just a guidepost because there's a lot of variables in these deals. So as you look to what the package differentiators are, you start to see some of the same themes we've seen in some of the other competitors we've covered. So the free, you get 3-party meetings and 5,000 minutes using the WebRTC-based audio and video stuff, so what we're doing. You also get the file sharing, persistent chat, and all that, and you're limited to 10 integrations that, like everyone's got their app store, you can do 10 integrations there. If you then upgrade to M1 and actually start paying, you're still got the 3-party meeting, but you get unlimited integrations. You get single sign-on. You actually get an administration portal and analytics. You get connections to Exchange, Outlook, Active Directory, and you get live human being support. So the free version, yeah, here's some stuff, go play with it, don't bother me. M1, you actually start getting support, you start getting things that a real business would care about, like an administration portal. And so that's the uplift to get to 1, is to get really that administration stuff. Once you get to M2, you get up to 25-party meetings, still unlimited integrations, SSO, and all of that stuff. The big jump between M1 and M2 is the fact that the meetings increase to 25 users, or 25 participants. When you move to M3, it gets weird. M3 does all the stuff that M1 and M2 does, but it's now 200 parties in a conference. But it's not a Spark conference. It's a Webex conference. Because as part of M3, you get a Webex license. And so Spark, basically not scaling past really 25 users in a conference. And if you want up to 200, you can go to Webex. Again, to anybody who's been on these calls before, you already know what I'm going to say. Circuit can scale up to 1,500 users in a conference. We don't play these, 25, 200 party conference things. We are light years beyond that. And we certainly don't need to go out to somebody like Webex or GoToMeeting or whatever to be able to get to that range. So there's a lot of goodness to what Circuit's offering just in the M series, without even adding any of the calling stuff in. There's a lot of goodness that you can beat them on. I mean, pricing certainly is there, but also just the capabilities. So as you look into Spark Call, like I said, adds some telephony capabilities. And the telephony capabilities only integrate with, of course, a communications manager on premise. They're not the same system, but there's a tie-in there. And so as you look at pricing, like I said, it's basically the M level package plus $20, or if you get to be a larger customer, it drops down to 18. But again, all that stuff is probably changeable. I'm not thinking that the M1 and the M2 packages are too changeable, because you're really only talking about in the SMB market there, so there's not a lot of pull. But I think once you're in M3 and you start to get hundreds, if not thousands of users, I think that price gets a little more elastic. And so with Spark Call, it's kind of all the same. The C packages, there's only one level of service. So the difference between an M package and a C package is just adding a C package, which is the same, to whatever M package there is, if that makes sense. So if you look below at the package differentiators or differences, there's no difference in what I'm describing to any of those, because it's all the same. You get cloud calling from a North American provider with North American numbering, and messaging, basically voicemail, unified messaging, also being unlimited. From that point, you can then rent a desk phone, or buy one, I guess, and that becomes your price. So it's $20 plus a phone, plus the M1 package. That's what you're running at about a month. And so, again, your pricing, when you compare what NTS is offering, it's a whole lot nicer. So as we look up to Cisco's weaknesses and our main takeaways at the top, Cisco's got a lot of iterations of the cloud. It's confusing, and it shows a lack of understanding and leadership. Certainly, if I were talking to a customer who was like serious on Cisco or was part of the short list, I would kind of point out, is Broadsoft the end of the road? Does Spark have a future? What about all this other stuff? How do we know when the merry-go-round stops and this is actually the product? And so I think that's a certain card to play, because you can go in there and say, yeah, OpenScape Voice and OpenScape Cloud, yeah, that is kind of the going forward thing for us. That's what it was, that's what it will be. We're good with that. We don't need to make 4 mistakes to get it right, depending how much of a, whatever, smart person you want to be, how ironic you want to be. Anyway, key selling discussion with prospects. With Cisco, you'll be migrating twice. Unless you are a current Broadsoft customer, in all likelihood, even if you're buying Spark today, Spark will be outshone or replaced by Broadsoft. And so if you're on HCS, it's the same thing. You're again going to probably move to Broadsoft at some point. And so do you want that forklift from system to system that's really not compatible? The systems really aren't compatible. With us, OpenScape Voice comes out with version 10. Surprise, OpenScape Cloud gets version 10. But it's an upgrade version. It's not, forklifting the whole back end. And if you buy, a phone with Spark, does the phone necessarily work with Broadsoft if that moves forward? So there's all sorts of cost and migration and whatever that customers should really be concerned about with Cisco from the way they're handling cloud so far. And like I say, Spark is always going to cost more. For example, if you take the M2 package plus C2, you're at $35 a month versus the NTS pricing of the team offer, which includes a lot more calling features. It includes a lot more conferencing and capabilities and scalability and all that stuff, and it's 19 bucks. Goes without saying, at $16 less a month, customers should be happier with that. Spark is limited to integration with, like I said, the Cisco telephony platform with Communications Manager. Spark has made no reference to ever connecting to anything outside of the Cisco world. So for those customers with a multi-vendor environment, Cisco's not really going to be the overlay that helps them. I mean, certainly you can overlay Spark from a persistent chat capability over probably anything, but at the minute you try to connect it into and make it integrated with the other systems in the network, it's not going to work. Like I said, Spark conferencing severely limited. Even if the M3 package, the best you can get, it's 200 users, and that's on Webex. Circuits, supports 1,500. Only Webex supports guest access. I forgot that below. So once you're into M3, you actually get guest access. M2 and M1, there is no guest access. You're a named user on it or you're not. And so, and you're adding, even when you're in the Spark piece, so Webex, you can do full audio, video guest access. If you're still in Spark at that point, you can only do audio participation during a meeting if you're the guest. And it's only on a one-time basis. So I can't add somebody into a reoccurring meeting and have them stick. It's almost like a telephony, conference call, right? You dial into a conference bridge and you enter in the passcode and you can get into that conference. But if the passcode changes, you can't get in and you'd have to get reissued a new passcode. Think of it like that when you think about guest access with Spark on an M3 package, that you have to keep getting that new invitation to a conference or to a session. Kind of messy and kind of not great. So Spark calling limited to North America, basically because international expansion failed. They couldn't get a carrier to sign up to resell it. They couldn't get someone who was going to, IntelliPeer in the US, not exactly a household name. Tata Communications is more well-known globally, but not as a network carrier. And yet those are the only two that Cisco could really find in North America. I said two, and there's actually a third one I can't remember. It's out of Canada, but it's another small fry guy. It's not like Bell Canada. Spark pricing is a little bit mysterious because, like I said, Cisco sells the licenses in bulk to resellers who then name their own price on the open market. And so there is going to be wiggle room there, but it's, if I'm going to go for a cloud service and I want to go with, an OpEx price, do I want to have to be out there shopping around, finding, 5 or 10 different Spark resellers and cross-comparing quotes against all of them to try to see who's actually going to give us? That seems painful. I think you've got a better way to position that with customers. the Broadsoft acquisition should definitely place Spark HCS customers on hold as Cisco figures out what the heck they're going to do. I mean, certainly it throws some, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But in this case, it's kind of true. I mean, Cisco is kind of like Microsoft in that when they decide to change direction, they just like dump what the old was and bring in the new. There's not a lot of let's make this work together. And so as we'll see in the Broadsoft section coming up next, I'll talk about what I think that landscape is going to look like. But certainly the uncertainty about what's going to happen, because Cisco really hasn't announced anything, and that's not to throw blame. They only closed the deal like 3 weeks ago. So there may be some announcements at Enterprise Connect next week. We'll have to see. So a little bit of guesswork. So on the next page, so if we look at this, for anyone who's been on any of the prior calls, this is kind of sort of the same because it's basically our strengths. Atos is a $12 billion leader of IT services. We have more employees, and we cover 72 countries. So if a customer, regardless of their size, we've probably got somebody nearby who can help them. In addition to just the Unify piece, Atos offers some other pieces to complete a portfolio. There's the global Canopy's global array for cloud apps. So if you've got a customer who says, yeah, I'm really liking this OpenScape Cloud thing, that's really great, but got this other application that I'd love to have a way to host it in a cloud, you can bring Canopy into the deal and say, yeah, I got a way for you to host that outside of your own data center. And you can bring that piece in as well. Atos offers that mix of IT services and expertise that really with Cisco, when you're talking about Cisco being predominantly a channel sale, those skills are going to vary by reseller. And so you've got the ability as a distributor of Unify as well as a reseller of Unify to tap back into our knowledge that your business may not have, an expertise that you've not explored yet. With Cisco, it's less likely you're able to do that. Unify and Atos offer, like I said, we offer experience in vertical markets and geographies. Cisco talks vertical markets on the premise stuff, but they really haven't gotten to that point as far as the cloud stuff. And so as you position OpenScape Cloud and you think about what things OpenScape Voice can do on premise in certain vertical markets and certain strengths it has there, those strengths probably carry over into OpenScape Cloud. So you can talk about those vertical expertise items, whether you're talking about the cloud or prem. Unify, whatever, the OpenScape Cloud and circuit strengths, we only have one application. We had one application yesterday, we have one application today, we have one application tomorrow. It's OpenScape Voice and Circuit. They're both multi-tenant applications, and I know I just said one. They're a combined application. They're two applications that are multi-tenant. They were built for multi-tenant. We don't have to make mistakes with Hux and HCS and Spark and now Broadsoft. We don't have that history. We don't have that mistake. So certainly a great thing to position to customers. Don't you want to be with the guy that got it right the first time? Competitors like Cisco, scrambled to build and acquire the same type of multi-tenant platform Unify has. And we've had it for a decade. So if I'm a communications manager premise customer and Cisco says go to the cloud, unless you're going to HCS, it's going to be a pretty significant migration. And a Unify customer, regardless of prem or cloud, is not going to have that kind of migration. We make it easier for them. We even, because we connect to all different kinds of the telephony systems, we make it easier on Cisco customers as well. You can walk into a Cisco customer today and say, yeah, you're liking that communications manager? Fine, we're all happy you like that. Let's talk about a team collaboration application like Circuit. You got 8 different Cisco systems, that's fine, but you know what, you got 2 Avayas over there. How are you going to support them? And you can walk in with Circuit and say, guess what, we can overlay Circuit on top of all of those users. We can also connect the telephony platforms to Circuit to be able to provide that kind of seamless telephony voice experience across both of the Avaya and Cisco platforms through the Circuit application. Cisco can't do that. They can't do it with Spark. They're not going to be able to do it with Broadsoft. And so I think that's a good story to tell for those many, many customers who have more than one vendor in their back room. Like I said, at 500,000 paid subscribers, Circuit maintains one of the largest installed bases of team collaboration, at least that are paid. I mean, sure, you see all the announcements out there about Slack, about we have X number of million customers. How many are paid? OpenScape Cloud works with the carriers and service providers for a win-win. NTS is providing the network services for this offer. We're not trying to say, oh, well, you should get rid of that and we're just going to do it on our own. No, we're going through using them. Company level strengths, with Spark and HCS, because there are some strengths to these product lines and companies. Cisco certainly is a household name in IT. You can't, find an IT person who doesn't know Cisco, and know of them and know their products and probably uses their products at some level inside their organization. So they have that kind of recognition. They also tend to outspend everybody. Just like Microsoft, big budgets, big spending, big on marketing, big on research and development. But it's interesting, when you look at R&D, they don't always get it right and they don't always get it first. OpenScape Voice is a better multi-tenant platform than what Cisco has. Circuit beat them to market. There are other applications we could talk about, like contact center or whatever, where we've also beaten Cisco to market by like decades with certain technologies. So they do a lot, but it doesn't mean they're perfect. Product offerings and strengths. So HCS is good for those uncompromising customers who want OpEx pricing. So if there's a customer out there that has a premise installation that is complicated as heck and it's very customized to what their specific needs are, guess what? Them going to HCS, it's not a bad move for them if they want to go to OpEx pricing, because they can replicate that environment in the cloud. Now, that said, if that same customer came to you and said, yeah, I'm really custom and this whole OpenScape Cloud thing isn't completely working for me, you could also say, hey, guess what? We could take that and host it in a data center, and you could have the same type of uncompromising, custom solution that HCS would offer. Spark has started to add contact center-like features to Spark. So the thing called Spark Care, which is actually just hunt groups at this point. I assume that will be abandoned because Broadsoft has an actual contact center application. But it just shows that they're thinking in the customer service contact center type marketplace being a need in the cloud space as well. Spark support for Webex. There are those Webex customers, but Webex is sort of a crutch. If you look at what does Webex do, and some stuff it does do. I mean, there are things like polling and certain educational things where you're giving a class that they have features that are interesting. There's the ability to take control of the screen so that if you're in like a service environment and you're able to give control of your local laptop to a service professional who can then sort of try to fix out what's on your laptop remotely. Webex can do those kind of things that a Circuit application or even a Spark application can't do. But if you're looking for a team collaboration application, but you're also looking for conferencing that doesn't hit those kind of very specialized markets, Circuit at 1,500 users is a heck of a lot better than Webex and a heck of a lot better than Spark. So Webex does do some things, and that's why I put it in the good pile, does do some things that Circuit does not do. But for the majority of customers, Circuit's probably going to be able to do exactly what Webex does, and for a whole lot more users. So that's the end of Cisco and their legacy cloud applications. Are there any questions out there? I'm hearing nope. So let's move on to Cisco and Broadsoft. Oh, wrong button. So Cisco Broadsoft. So who is Broadsoft? They're based out of Gaithersburg, Maryland, so just north of Washington, D.C. They had about 1,750 employees at last count. Cisco closed their acquisition of them in February of 2018 at a cost of $1.9 billion. Cloud PBX, UC, Contact Center, those are all that's their bailiwick. And they sell those applications to, they say, over 600 global service providers in 80 countries. Most carriers have some kind of an instance of Broadsoft in their system. It's basically resold to the SMB clients who don't require really complex and big feature sets. But it is kind of one of those things that it's everywhere. Financials, though, about 360 million in fiscal 2017. That's my best guess, because when Cisco acquired them, they sort of didn't have to then file their fourth quarter. And so that's based on their 3 quarters of reported earnings plus a guesstimate on what the fourth quarter would bring. So about 360 million is a decent enough number. Broadsoft cloud offering. So Broadsoft's historic selling model was to sell BroadWorks. And BroadWorks is a server-based solution that they would sell to a carrier and sell them a bucket of licenses, and say, go forth and multiply and go forth and sell. And it was an OpEx buy. No, sorry, it was a CapEx buy from Broadsoft. The carrier bought it as a CapEx buy. And so those licenses on BroadWorks were all perpetual. So if they bought 1,000 licenses and they sold 1,000 licenses and one customer with 50 licenses ran away, they could take those 50 licenses at no cost and reapportion them to another customer. And so once Broadsoft sold it, they sold it. And that's why you look at 600 service providers, God knows how many end users, and only 360 million in revenue, because they only sold the system once and then left it. Sure, the customer could come back and say, yeah, we need another 10,000 licenses, and they would sell them those perpetual licenses. But again, it was a one-time shot. So in the other part of in 2010, they announced Broad Cloud. So Broad Cloud is the BroadWorks application loaded into a Broadsoft hosted cloud. And so it's almost identical to what BroadWorks is. Now, since 2010, they've added a couple of applications to their portfolio that are only available from the cloud. And so you can be a carrier who sells and purchases BroadWorks, and then also buy the cloud add-ons if you want to and resell those to those same customers. But the cloud add-ons are all reoccurring revenue. So Broad Cloud was the thought of how do we get some reoccurring revenue, because we didn't make the right choice selling these things as CapEx. And so that's what Broad Cloud did. And now all these additional applications are, again, trying to sort of move their model into a reoccurring revenue model. And certainly it's not, surprise to anybody that Cisco will be pushing further in that direction. Going forward, Broadsoft is planning, like I said, new features in Broad Cloud exclusively. Cisco's plans are unknown. So Broadsoft, like I said, BroadWorks, software providing UC1, and UC1, like I said, is the basic PBX, IM, presence, web collaboration application. There's also a CC1, and Contact Center 1 came from Transera, and it is a multi-channel contact center solution. Then there's Broad Cloud, which is all of BroadWorks, plus right now adding their application called Team1, which is another team collaboration application from a company they acquired called IntelliNote. Then there's UC1 Hub. And you see some of the acronyms out there, CPaaS, whatever. I call it, it's cloud-hosted APIs that developers can utilize to connect to different things. So if you want access to the APIs and you want to be able to test against them and run in their sandbox, you go through UC1 Hub, which is cloud-based and, again, recurring. So supports both BroadWorks and Broad Cloud because, in essence, the APIs are the same. Pricing-wise, as you might imagine, like we talked about with HCS, it's a little difficult to find completely good pricing, because Broadsoft sold these licenses, whether it was BroadWorks or Broad Cloud, they sell them at a wholesale price to a carrier who then resells them. And so that resale price can vary, and it can vary greatly. One of the reasons why it varies greatly is because carriers like to bundle stuff together. So just looking at some of the carriers I looked at, and I went pretty global. I was looking at carriers in Asia and Europe and whatever to try to find carriers with basically a clean offer, meaning they weren't trying to stuff in broadband internet access and other network services into a bundle, making it difficult to understand what the Broadsoft piece was actually doing in the price, if that makes sense. So as we look at pricing, you get Team 1, and that pricing is actually good because that's on the Broadsoft website. You can actually go on the Broadsoft website and buy Team 1 for $5.99 for up to 100 users. You get 1,000 video minutes, 5 gig of storage, and 10 integrations into their App Store thing. Once you move over 100 users, you then bump into custom. There is no set price for it, they say. So it's 4,000 video minutes per user, unlimited storage, unlimited integration, custom API access, and a bigger one, it ties you into SLAs. You can get service level agreements out of them to manage downtime. But that's just the Team 1 piece. So when you look at an offer that was found, Verizon Virtual Communications Express, VCE, which is Broadsoft. So if you look at, they've got 2 different pricing tiers. Standard is about 18 to 20 bucks a piece. Premier is 30 to 45. Typically, the standard pricing is for groups that are more than 50 users, and the Premier is typically for those users that are less than 50, which that doesn't sound right, does it? Well, here's the deal. Within these packages, you don't have to all be on the same pricing level. So if you look below in the standard, you see you get a shared trunk, you get local long distance calling, there's no UC, there's no mobile client, there's no team collaboration. Those are all add-ons and optional. In the Premier, all of those things are standard. And so for customers that are larger than 50 users, what this package allows them to do is say, I have 100 users. Let's see, 25 of them need UC, 5 of them need the mobile app, and 50 of them need the team collaboration application. And you can then, the add-ons for those in that situation are likely to be less than paying for the Premier, the Premier level. And so they're assuming that smaller users, you just get it all. Bigger users are going to want to customize. And you don't have to be all on one license level for this offer. And so you can pick and choose what options you add. And so that's why the pricing looks weird, but that's how it works in reality. So like I said, in the add-ons, a mobile client's $1.25 a month. So if I just want the mobile client for everybody at 18 bucks, I'm at 19.25, maybe I'm good to go. Maybe team collaboration adds, $5 to that. Again, I'm still below the Premier price level. And so that's the deal and how they're working that. But again, as you go out there and compete in this marketplace, and people like Verizon or AT&T or name your carrier start promoting their solutions, you have to sort of take a moment and step back and educate those customers to understand that the price that they're giving, the carrier is giving, may not just be for that UC portion. Like I said, it may include broadband internet access, it may include other network services. So you have to have the customer be aware that they may not be seeing apples to apples, and to sort of help them with that. If I look at Cisco Broadsoft, the main takeaways here, like I said in the last one, Cisco's got a lot of iterations of cloud. It's confusing and shows a lack of understanding and certainly leadership in the cloud space. Broadsoft is just the latest in a series of missteps. Is it the last? Who knows? Certainly for 1.9 billion, you hope it is, but who knows? Key selling discussions. So with Broadsoft, again, just like Cisco, you'd be migrating twice. If you're on a premise system, you hit BroadWorks or Broad. So even if you're on BroadWorks and Broad Cloud, what's Cisco going to do to it? Does Spark come into Broadsoft? Does Broadsoft overtake Spark? Without knowing that, it's kind of hard to sort of figure out what the customer may find in the future. So again, it's more FUD. It's more sowing the seeds of uncertainty, which I don't think is unrealistic in this case, because customers should know what's going on. And granted, that door may close next week if Cisco makes a big announcement at Enterprise Connect about what they're going to do with Broadsoft, but I think it's going to be longer than that. Just for the heck of it, if you look at Enterprise Connect and look at who the Cisco keynote speaker is, it's not a top level guy. It's not the big guy. It's somebody else. And so if there was going to be a major announcement, Rowan Trollope would be there, who's head of the collaboration business. It's not Rowan. And Rowan usually is the one who does present it at Enterprise Connect. So I don't see that there's going to be a big Broadsoft push there. But it may be in June or July when they have their user conference, but who knows? But for the moment, customers should be a little wary of that. Broadsoft-based offerings are generally going to be more expensive. Again, I can't really say all the time they're going to be more expensive because the prices fluctuate by how the end carrier packages them. But I will say most of the time from the services I was looking at, you're going to be cheaper and well cheaper. So multiple user interfaces in the Broadsoft product line, basically because of the acquisitions, and they have not really integrated them. If you look at UC1 and CC1, those are two separate applications and remain separate. There is no unified interface between all of these little bit parts that they have. And so even in the cloud, or especially in the cloud, you expect one user interface. Team 1 is poorly integrated with the rest of the Broadsoft portfolio because it was an acquisition. Compare that to Circuit that seamlessly interacts with OpenScape Voice and OpenScape Cloud and probably acts better with Broadsoft than Broadsoft's Team 1 does. Team 1 cannot scale to 1,500 users. Pretty much 1,500 users in this space seems to be the benchmark. I've not seen anyone else out there who is doing these type of team collaboration conferencing applications that's better than 1,500. Broadsoft users tended to be small. Larger users just didn't feel comfortable with the level of feature richness in the BroadWorks broad cloud offers. And so start to talk to customers that are talking about the cloud. What do you want to give up when you go to the cloud? And see what Broadsoft is or is not offering. I know in things like analytics and reporting and management, Broadsoft is pretty bad. So start to hit on those things. Oftentimes, people negatively talk about Broadsoft as being Centrex 2.0. And for anybody who's been in the market for a while, Centrex 1.0 was no features, no nothing, and that's why the independent PBX came into the marketplace, because the carriers offered such a bad solution. So BroadWorks certainly can be painted in that light and is by many in the marketplace. BroadWorks, BroadCloud, Team 1, all of that portfolio really only support the Broadsoft portfolio. They're not going to connect to other vendors' systems. Now, granted, in the future, they're probably going to connect to the Cisco world, but they're not going to connect to Avaya or NEC or anybody else out there in the world. OpenScape Cloud and Circuit do. Lack of standardized pricing and packaging. It's just like I said with some of the stuff on Spark. Because of the way that it's sold, the pricing is going to be different based on everybody you talk to. And so is it the customer's job? I mean, it's like buying a Chevy, right? If you want to go out there and buy a car, you go to like 5 different Chevy dealerships and play them off each other to see who's going to give you the best deal. Is that the way a customer wants to buy cloud services, or do they just want the price? If you wind up in this situation, as I said, Broadsoft has like 600 carriers that host their solution. I don't know if you wind up talking to a multinational customer, if an instance of Broadsoft running on BT would be able to integrate to an instance of Broadsoft running on Verizon and connect that company. I don't know if that's possible. I think it's probably rare at this stage in the market that you'll run into that type of customer, but I'd throw it out there just in case. So corporate strengths, identical to what I said in the last part. We're big, we make a lot of money, we're in a lot of countries, feel comfortable that our portfolio and our ability to assist our reseller channel with certain expertise outshines what Cisco is going to be able to offer. OpenScape Voice and Cloud and Circuit strengths, again, they're going to be about the same as what we talked about before. Now, BroadWorks, BroadCloud strengths. Company level strengths, they've got a large installed base of Broadsoft. I mean, it's global, it's 600 service providers, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of users. So there is a household name going on there a little bit inside at least the carrier market space. Cisco's purchase adds some credibility to that because they're going to slap their name on everything, and it also adds money for investment. Powered by Broadsoft, that was a program that Broadsoft introduced in the last year to 18 months, where if you remember the whole Intel Inside campaign, Broadsoft created a campaign powered by Broadsoft that went directly to end users in order to get them to talk to their carriers to say, is that Broadsoft? That's what I want to buy, and to create some kind of pull in the market from customers. Cisco does continue that process. Right now, all the original Broadsoft material online has just been rebranded with Cisco. Whether that continues or not, we don't know. So that's worth seeing if Cisco views that as a successful strategy or not. Customers' carrier relationship may be a problem to conversion. So if you've got a customer out there who's like, I really love my Verizon, and you're going to say, well, okay, you can come to OpenScape Cloud, but we're providing the carrier services, that may be a problem that you can't overcome. Product offering and strengths. They have multi-channel contact center at this point. It's not the best in the world, but it's there. And I think that's the biggest strength they have at this point. The big question that, of course, everyone wants to know is what's Cisco going to do with Broadsoft? Basically, the answer is going to be stay tuned. My personal thought, I foresee Spark ultimately going away because I don't think it adds much to the picture. And I think Spark as a team collaboration application doesn't have enough of a differentiator to Broadsoft's Team 1, and I don't think it has enough of an installed base to make that worth keeping. So I think Broadsoft's Team 1 will pick up whatever features that it lacks that Spark has, and it will be the product going forward. I think Spark Call, there's no question that's going to die. It was never a successful launch. It never worked outside North America. The international partner community never picked it up, whereas you have Broadsoft with 600 global carriers. It's not tough to think that Spark is just going to die. Now, whether Broadsoft's portfolio gets named Spark, that I can't tell you. I don't know what the branding is going to be, but I think what we know as the original Spark application definitely is on its last legs at this point. And so that's what I think is going to happen going forward, because it just doesn't make sense to keep two of everything. And I think Broadsoft has the bigger installed base and the bigger muscle in the market than Spark had. And so it's easier to get rid of Spark than it is to try to do something with Broadsoft, because frankly, that's what they paid $1.9 billion for, not for Spark. So that's ultimately what I think is going to happen. How soon that happens, we won't know until the year progresses. Like I said, if there's nothing announced at Enterprise Connect, I would look for, Cisco has their developer and user conferences over the summer. I think one of them is in June. That may be a release point, or at least a talking to customers point, at which point we will probably understand better what Broadsoft is going to be. So it's basically a stay tuned thing, but I would think that Spark is going to be the loser in this. So that ends this session. Are there any other questions about Cisco and Broadsoft that I can answer for you all?